I watched Nathan clink glasses with General Trask under the soft glow of chandelier light, the polished silverware on the table reflecting everything they wanted him to be. Confident, clean-cut, decorated, the heir apparent. Meanwhile, I sat next to a rusted trolley with a leaking trash bag that smelled like spoiled shrimp. I lit a cigarette. No one stopped me. Maybe they hoped I'd set the place on fire and save them the trouble of pretending I mattered. It had been 7 years since I'd left home. 5 since I left the service. 2 since I stopped answering calls from anyone who shared my blood. I wasn't here to mend fences. I came because I was curious, morbidly so. Like rubbernecking a wreck you walked away from, just to see if the bodies were still there. Nathan saw me from across the room. He hesitated, just for a blink. Then he turned back to his fan club, raised a glass, and made a speech about honor, duty, and legacy. My father stood behind him like a granite statue, nodding with pride. Legacy. That word again. When the applause died down, I slipped out the side door and lit another cigarette. The air outside was sharp and cold, like it was trying to peel something off me. I stared at the parking lot, wondering how fast I could vanish again before someone noticed I'd even come. But then I heard it. "Reese!" My mother's voice. Software strained. She stood in the doorway, wrapped in a silver shawl like armor. Her eyes, tired but still sharp, pinned me like a butterfly to a corkboard. I hadn't spoken to her in years, not since the trial. She stepped closer. "You didn't return my messages." There wasn't anything left to say. "That's not true," she said. "You could have said you were alive." I shrugged. "You figured that out tonight." She looked like she wanted to touch my face but knew I'd flinch. Instead, she reached into her clutch and handed me a folded envelope. Heavy paper, embossed seal, Airborne Defense Command. "I'm not coming back," I said, already turning away. "It's not a request," she said. "It's about Artemis." That stopped me cold. I hadn't heard that name in years. Artemis wasn't a person. It was a project. Classified, dangerous, buried deep in the vaults of what they used to call defense intelligence before they started calling it threat architecture. "I'm out," I said. "Whatever they're playing with now, I want no part of it." She didn't flinch. "Then you need to see this." She walked back inside, leaving the envelope in my hand like a live grenade. Back at my apartment, I cracked the seal. No salutation, no pleasantries, just a photo. It was a still frame pulled from surveillance footage. A figure in a facility hallway. Long black coat, no insignia. Face blurred by motion. But I knew that gait, that posture. It was me. Only I hadn't been there. I didn't even recognize the location. But the timestamp was recent, 2 weeks ago. Attached was a single line of text. AR-07 reactivated. Unauthorized deployment confirmed. Containment failed. AR-07. Artemis Revision 7. The last project I worked on before I was discharged under irreconcilable conduct. A ghost unit. Built from zero ID assets. Soldiers with no past, no future. The best we could find, and the worst we could afford to lose. And we'd lost them. All of them. Or so we thought. I reached for my phone and typed a number I swore I'd never dial again. 3 rings. Then a familiar voice. Gravelly, amused. "Well, well. If it isn't the prodigal son." "Colonel Vance," I said, "I need to talk, somewhere quiet." We met at an old motor lodge off Highway 17, the kind of place people go to disappear. Vance looked older, leaner, less bark, more bite. He poured 2 whiskeys and slid one across the table. "So," he said, "they found one." "I think someone released one," I replied. He nodded slowly. "I warned them Artemis was a powder keg. but Cross insisted it could be controlled. My father always did like his toys. Vance leaned forward. You remember Echo? That name hit like a body blow. Echo was one of the originals, the best of the black prototypes. Fast, quiet, surgical. We trained him to infiltrate high-value targets and vanish without a trace. No paper trail, no conscience. He disappeared during the Tigress sweep. Everyone assumed he'd gone rogue or been killed. Echo's alive? I asked. Vance just looked at me. What's the play? I said. You want me to go find him? No, he said. We want you to stop him. I stared into the bottom of the glass. Why me? Because he still thinks you're his handler. I didn't sleep that night. My dreams were full of static and blood. I remembered the way Echo used to shadow me in training, always watching, mimicking. He learned faster than the others, killed faster too. But there was something else. A hesitation I saw once, just once. He looked at me after a mission went sideways. A look that asked a question he didn't know how to form. What am I? Back then, I didn't have the guts to answer. Now, I might have to kill him for asking. 2 days later, I was on a transport bound for a facility in New Marion. They'd had a breach. 5 guards dead. Systems wiped. One of the survivors kept whispering the same word over and over. Ghost. But I knew better. It wasn't a ghost. It was Echo. And he was coming for us. One by one. 7 years ago, I was a senior cadet at Strathmore Military Academy. Top of my class in logistics. Fluent in Russian, Arabic, and Mandarin. Handpicked for Officer Training Command. I wasn't just on the path. I was the path. Everything was mapped out. Cross family blood ran thick in that academy's halls, and I was the next in line to make the name mean something again. Then came the exercise. A joint simulation with first years. A chaotic, high-pressure night drill deep in Sector 9, where protocol meets unpredictability. Somewhere between the 5th marker and the mock extraction point, I picked up a miscalibration on the perimeter sensors. Looked like a routine glitch, but the math didn't sit right. So I ran the diagnostics again. It wasn't a glitch. It was an unregistered detonation zone, live charges for a separate demolition drill, scheduled for the next rotation. The juniors didn't know. Neither did half of our own squad. I called an audible. Redirected 5 cadets off path, away from the zone, without clearing it through command. The maneuver cut our completion score by 20%. But those 5 cadets walked off that field without so much as a scratch. I figured I'd take the hit in the debrief, maybe a write-up for skipping protocol. I didn't expect what came next. The morning after the simulation, I was called into Major Silas Burke's office. He didn't offer me a seat. The mission was compromised, he said flatly. I stared at him, confused. Compromised? You defied a direct order. You undermined chain of command. You endangered your team. I started to speak, but he held up a hand. Don't interrupt. He slid a copy of the after-action report across the desk. I scanned it, and my stomach twisted. It didn't just twist. It broke. The report had been rewritten. My call to reroute the cadets? Reframed as a panic reaction. My instincts labeled as reckless improvisation. And my motives? Unstable under pressure. Exhibits defiant behavior in high-stress conditions. There was a signature at the bottom. Brigadier Alan Cross. My father. He hadn't called me, hadn't questioned me, hadn't even asked for my version, just signed the line and handed me over. I sat there, frozen. The walls of that office were covered in framed citations, degrees, photos from past cadet classes. I stared at the one from '92, his own graduating class. The brass frame gleamed like a blade. Burke leaned back. You have 2 options, he said. Resign quietly, or we bring you before tribunal. Your record, your scholarship, everything goes up in smoke. I asked for time. He gave me 10 minutes. I walked the length of the campus alone. The sky over Strathmore was steel gray, clouds heavy with rain. The parade grounds were empty. No one came looking for me. No one called to ask what happened. Not my instructors, not my peers, not my brother. Nathan was a freshman then, still in his regulation blues, still polishing boots like they were holy relics. I found him outside the chapel. He saw me coming, eyes already wary. "They're saying you lost control," he said before I could open my mouth. "I saved 5 lives," I replied. He nodded, slowly. "Maybe, but you broke the chain." It wasn't anger in his voice. It was something worse. Agreement. I didn't speak to him again for 3 years. I signed the resignation, cited personal reasons. They processed it in 48 hours. No ceremony. No send-off. I was escorted out of the barracks like a civilian who'd wandered in by mistake. Strathmore erased me like a smudge on a perfect record. The news never made the public feeds. That was the point. The cross name remained intact. So did Burke's command. And me? I vanished. At first, I tried to find work in civilian logistics. But the doors always closed once they ran a deep check. Eventually, I stopped trying. I drifted. South Africa? Jakarta? Prague? I did security contracts, private training gigs. Occasionally, I got approached for things that didn't have contracts, just names on napkins and untraceable cash. I didn't say yes to everything, but I didn't say no enough either. My past became background noise, something I carried like a shadow that never quite matched the light. But sometimes, late at night, I'd dream of that simulation again. I'd see those 5 cadets walking blindly toward the zone. I'd see myself yelling at them to move. The explosion never happened in the dream, but I always woke up before I knew if they listened. 2 years after I left Strathmore, I ran into Cadet Vargas in a bar in Nairobi. He was one of the juniors I rerouted that night. He recognized me instantly. "You saved my ass," he said, buying me a drink. "I redirected you," I replied. "They said it was reckless." He looked at me like I'd just kicked over a gravestone. "They lied," he said. "That zone went hot 20 seconds after you pulled us. If we'd kept going—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. I never forgot the look in his eyes. It was the first time in years I felt like I wasn't crazy. And now, 7 years later, here I was, back on the radar, back in the thick of a world that had swallowed me and spat me out. They didn't want me back because they believed in me. They wanted me back because Artemis was loose, because something I helped build had slipped its leash, because they knew I was the only one who could track it, and maybe, just maybe, put it down. But part of me knew better. They didn't call me because I was their best shot. They called me because I was disposable, just like Echo, just like the rest of the shadows we trained and buried. This wasn't redemption, it was containment. I was being brought in like a dirty secret pointed at another one, and if I failed, they'd bury me again. But this time I'd make damn sure they remembered why. After the fall, I vanished from public view, but I didn't spiral. I didn't hit the bottle, didn't chase adrenaline or revenge. I simply disappeared into the noise of the world, the kind of silence that can't be tracked because it doesn't broadcast pain. It absorbs it. For 3 weeks, I drifted without a plan, burned through my last paycheck from a private gig in Tunisia, slept in motels where the power flickered and the walls whispered. I figured this was the rest of my life, floating in the space between dishonor and oblivion, invisible, discarded. Then the envelope came. No return address, no markings. Just a heavy beige envelope slipped under my door like an afterthought. Inside was a train ticket, Portland, Oregon, a plastic keycard, blank except for a single serial code etched along the edge, and a narrow strip of thermal paper, like something ripped from an old cash register. It read, "Verification Division, Department 9. We see what others bury." I stared at it for a long time. Then I burned the envelope, packed my bag, and caught the next train. The ride to Oregon was uneventful, unless you count the constant paranoia that someone might be tailing you. But no one came. No men in black. No intercept teams. Just me and a rattling train car cutting through forests and mountains and miles of unresolved history. When I arrived in Portland, I followed the instructions exactly. From the station, a walk to an old library near Burnside. In the back, an out-of-service elevator. I swiped the card on what looked like a cracked fuse box. The panel blinked green. The elevator opened. What waited below wasn't military. Not exactly. Department 9 didn't run like a base. It felt more like a vault that had been turned into a think tank, one designed by people who didn't care about medals, ranks, or ceremony. The lighting was low, the air filtered, and the walls layered with soundproof composites. The people who worked there didn't wear uniforms. They wore fatigue. Not the kind from combat, but from constant vigilance. I was led to a room the size of a studio apartment, one table, 2 chairs, a monitor displaying satellite feeds and encrypted communication traffic in real time. A woman sat across from me. Civilian clothes, steel gray hair cut short, eyes that scanned like a biometric scanner. She didn't introduce herself. "You're here because we don't believe in myths," she said. I waited. She placed a folder on the table. Thick, heavily redacted. I saw my name on the first page. "You were discredited not because you made a mistake," she said, "but because you told the truth before someone else was ready to." I said nothing. She opened the folder and flipped to a photograph. My field maneuver during the simulation, a wide-angle satellite capture. "You saved lives," she said. "Burke buried it. Your father endorsed it. And the system let them." Then she closed the folder. "Now we want you to work for us." Department 9 wasn't part of any official military branch. It wasn't in any public database, budget line, or oversight hearing. It existed beneath the waterline, where the iceberg gets sharp. Their mission was surgical: data integrity, threat verification, and Black Project cleanup. If the traditional chain of command couldn't, or wouldn't, deal with something, it quietly became ours. No uniforms, no medals, no press. I didn't get a title. I didn't want one. I just listened. I learned. I hunted lies. Most people think intel work is all spy thrillers and secret missions. It's not. It's long hours, digging through code and chatter, cross-referencing anomalies, flagging discrepancies in operational records. Some nights I stared at the same 3 seconds of drone footage for 12 hours straight, trying to catch what didn't belong. But every once in a while, something did. An altered timestamp, a ghost ping from a decommissioned facility, a command directive that appeared in one channel but was never sent. And that's when the real work started. We'd isolate it, trace it, decode the who, the how, and, more importantly, the why. And when the story didn't match the facts, we took it apart, because the truth has a shape. Even buried, it leaves edges. My first live operation came 6 months in. A listening post in northern Nevada had gone dark. The official line said a weather anomaly knocked out the uplink, but the logs didn't match the weather records. And the offsite backups? Tampered with. By someone using Burke's old command access. Yes, that Burke. We went in quiet. Just me and two agents I only knew by code names, Lumen and Dax. The outpost was dead when we arrived. Power drained, every terminal slagged. But someone had left a message carved into the wall with a broken antenna. One word: Echo. That was the first time I saw it since Strathmore. The code name. The ghost. The thing I thought I'd buried. He was alive. And moving. And he was signaling. To me. From that point on, everything changed. I wasn't just another cleanup analyst. I was now part of a very specific directive. One that existed inside a secure subnetwork buried even within Department 9. The AR protocol files. Artemis revision. It was all still there. Pieces of the Black Project we'd mothballed after the fallout. Echo, Delta, Ion, Shade. Units trained for psychological nullification and asymmetrical threat eradication. Weapons with names and ghosts for memories. Echo wasn't just alive. He was activating dead code, unfinished scripts, contingencies we never even tested. He wasn't killing operatives. He was reassembling something. And he was doing it right under our noses. I started operating differently after that, more independently, more off books. I knew I couldn't trust the system, not the upper brass, not even some corners of Department 9, so I built my own shadow net, watched every node, cross-checked every source. I started tracking the leak backwards, not just where Echo was, but how he got out. That's when I found the footage. Facility X-71. One of the vaults where we buried classified prototypes. There he was, Echo, walking straight out of containment. No resistance. The door was open from the inside. No breach. No override. Someone had let him out. And whoever it was, they wanted him to finish what Artemis started. I didn't ask for redemption. I wasn't on some crusade to clear my name. But now I had something else. Purpose. This wasn't just about Echo. It was about everything we covered up, everything that got stamped top secret and sealed under bureaucracy and fear. I was done being a casualty of other people's silence. Now I was the one hunting the silence. And I wasn't going to stop until I found the last person who still believed Echo was a myth and made them watch it bleed. Years passed, not in blurs or flashes, but in exacting, silent clicks, like the tick of a hard drive, like a lock being tested, again and again by a key that doesn't quite fit. I climbed through Department 9, one classified breadcrumb at a time. While others chased threats in the field, I hunted the invisible rot in our systems. Ghost signatures, buried protocols, manipulated intelligence trails. I became the one they called when something didn't add up, when a file was too clean, or when a story checked out too well. Redactions, forensics, clearance audits. That was my world. Not flashy, not heroic, but absolutely vital. Every lie has metadata. And I'd gotten damn good at reading lies in code. So when they asked me to oversee a civilian observation mission, low-risk background verification for cadet screening protocols, I didn't think twice. Just another job. I was told the facility was near Raven Rock. What they didn't tell me, what no one bothered to check, was who ran it now. I arrived in a plain coat, civilian ID, generic alias. I blended into the crowd like I always did. The review drills had already started. Neatly dressed cadets moved in coordinated bursts across the field, barked orders echoing across polished concrete. And then I saw him, Nathan, standing front and center in the command box, eyes sharp, voice precise. He was leading the drill like he'd been born in that uniform. His posture was textbook, rigid, proud, flawless. The crowd loved him. I stayed quiet, tucked behind two defense contractors and a bored-looking journalist watching from the bleachers, face unreadable. I didn't plan to reveal myself. I didn't want to. but the world had other plans. About 20 minutes into the drill, a shift happened. Not in the cadets, but in the air. A command sergeant, Wyatt by his tag, walked toward the stands with purpose. Eyes scanning, steady. Then he stopped, looked straight at me, and saluted. "Director Cross?" he said, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Ma'am, I wasn't told you'd be overseeing this." Everything stopped. Every pair of eyes in that stadium turned toward me. Civilians, officers, cadets. Cameras clicked. Whispered voices flared. The silence afterward was volcanic. Nathan stood frozen mid-command. I saw the shock flash through him, recognition, disbelief, then something colder. My father was there too, across the field, front row. His hands folded behind his back, unmoving. He didn't blink. He didn't flinch. He knew I was there before Wyatt said a word. I could tell. But he didn't stand. Not for me. And I didn't need him to. I rose slowly, my face carved from stone. "I'm off record," I said, voice even. "Carry on," Wyatt blinked. "Yes, ma'am." The drill resumed. Kind of. Cadets moved like they were still in the moment, but their focus was fractured. Their eyes drifted. Whispers passed like static. Nathan finished the set. Perfect on paper. But I saw the hesitation in his hands. That salute changed something. Afterward, I slipped away early, cutting through the rear of the facility. I knew the terrain. I always know the exits. But as I reached the side corridor leading to the visitor gate, I heard footsteps behind me. Then his voice. "You shouldn't be here." "Nathan." I turned. He stood in his formal blues, crisp as glass, jaw tight. His hands were balled fists. "I didn't plan this," I said. "You could have said something, warned me." "Would that have made this easier for you?" He took a breath, then stepped closer. "You humiliated me, in front of my unit, my team." "No," I said. "That was Wyatt. I just existed." He flinched like I'd slapped him. "You're not even military anymore," he muttered. "Neither are half the people who saved your ass in Operations Command last year," I shot back. "We just don't wear it on our sleeves." We stared at each other for a long moment. Two mirrors, warped by time. "You didn't come to see me," he said finally. "So why are you here?" I could have told him the truth, that I was auditing ghost signals from their logistics database, that the leak I was tracking led me here, that Echo's trail had resurfaced on his base. But I didn't. I just looked him in the eye. "Because the past doesn't stay buried," I said. "Not forever." That night, back at the temporary housing complex, I found an encrypted message waiting on my secure channel. From D9 internal up subject, asset confirmation, AR-07 linked. Raven Rock payload fragment detected. Logistics audit port. He was here. Echo. Or someone using his signal. Suddenly, everything felt like a trap. Not for me. For Nathan. Whoever triggered the leak knew I'd follow the scent. They knew I'd come to Raven Rock. That Wyatt would recognize me. That Nathan would be forced to confront his history in front of an audience. This wasn't random. It was staged. Someone wanted to shake the foundation. I pulled up the logistics port records. At 3:14 the night before the drill, an unauthorized transfer pinged the base's dormant comm relay. The file attached was scrambled. Video fragments, metadata strings, broken voice logs. But one line stood out, a voice I hadn't heard in years. Digitally degraded, but unmistakable. "You trained us to vanish. Now you'll learn what it means to be forgotten." Echo's voice. I stayed up all night parsing data, eyes stinging, pulse spiking. Every new byte peeled back another piece of the puzzle. He wasn't just ghosting through systems. He was leaving messages, breadcrumbs, warnings. For me. But also For Nathan, that part didn't make sense. Echo didn't know my brother, didn't care about politics or public standing. But if he was manipulating events to get my attention, why involve Raven Rock? Unless Nathan wasn't just a bystander. Unless he was a variable Echo needed to move. The next morning, I walked straight into Command HQ with full Department 9 authorization. No disguise, no cover. I didn't go there to make a scene. I went because I needed answers. Nathan was already waiting in the briefing room, alone. I saw the security logs, he said. The breach was aimed at me, wasn't it? I didn't lie. It was aimed at me. You were the bait. He nodded slowly, the weight of the truth sinking into his spine. So what happens now? I looked out the window. Soldiers marched in drills, flags flapping, rifles clacking. Now? Now the game was different. Now the shadows had names. And Echo wasn't running anymore. He was hunting. That night I couldn't sleep. The air inside the Raven Rock complex felt heavier, like the walls had started to hum with things no one wanted to admit out loud. Echo's message still rang in my head, looping like a corrupted file. You trained us to vanish. Now you'll learn what it means to be forgotten. But it wasn't just him haunting me now. It was the past, the simulation, Strathmore, the moment that destroyed everything. I'd looked at the report 100 times before, memorized it, hated it, tried to ignore it. But something about seeing Nathan on that field, the way my father didn't move, the way the ghost of Burke still walked those halls, it twisted something loose in me. So I opened the report again, line by line, bite by bite. Only this time I didn't just read it. I ran it through a new audit tool Department 9 had been testing, an experimental metadata parser designed to catch undetectable forgeries. Ghost edits, institutional tampering at the code level. The result popped up in less than 6 seconds. Flagged, undeclared alteration, 3 lines inserted source trail, redirected through legacy archive terminal. Xerxes 1:19. I blinked, sat up straighter. Xerxes 1:19 wasn't just a ghost terminal. It was decommissioned a decade ago, part of the old legacy archive system built before the defense matrix went digital. Only a handful of people ever had access to it. I checked the credentials used to authorize the change. Alan Cross, Brigadier ID number 781, CZK55. My father. But here's the thing. His credentials were revoked 5 years ago. 5 years ago. That meant someone had reactivated a dead ID just long enough to slip into the archive and rewrite the past. Not just to tarnish me, but to protect someone else. I kept going. I decrypted the full audit log and cross-referenced it against the security feeds from the day the report was modified. The pieces snapped into place with the cold precision of a loaded gun. The edit had been timed to coincide with Burke's promotion to Deputy Commander of Officer Development. 2 days before the Academy rankings were released. 3 days before a major funding announcement. If I hadn't redirected those cadets during the simulation, the deaths would have been on his watch, his exercise, his command. But instead of being held accountable, he got promoted, and I got erased. It wasn't just betrayal, it was strategy. A clean one, until now. I spent the next 6 hours building the case, frame by frame, every packet of altered metadata, every audit trail, every echo of the ghost terminal's activity. I charted the entire timeline, when the original report was filed, when the edits were made, who accessed what, and from where. There was enough here to bring down Burke. Maybe even strip my father of every bar and star he ever wore. But this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about proving that the system wasn't just flawed, it was rigged. I compiled the evidence into a single encrypted bundle, Then I activated Protocol Aether. Aether wasn't for complaints or chain of command disputes. It was Department 9's nuclear option, used only when the rot went so deep it had to be exposed system-wide, simultaneously, without chance of suppression. I uploaded the package, verified my biometric key, and hit send. It didn't take long for the alarms to go off, not the loud kind, the quiet ones. I got a ping from Director Harlan herself, Department 9's oversight lead. A simple message. "You sure about this?" I replied with one word. "Yes." 10 minutes later, the contents of the buried report were mirrored to secure terminals across 6 branches of the intelligence network: Academy Oversight, Ethics Board, Military Audit, Joint Command. The edit wasn't just exposed, it was preserved beyond reach. This wasn't a file someone could delete anymore. It was a truth with teeth. At 0600, I got a request for an emergency conference call. Not from D9, but from Airborne Command's Internal Affairs Unit. They wanted to talk. I declined. There was only one meeting I cared about. I walked into the Raven Rock mess hall just as morning briefings were beginning. Officers scattered at long steel tables, trays full, chatter low. Nathan was seated near the far end. My father was across from him, sipping coffee like nothing had changed. I walked straight up to their table. My father looked up slowly. His eyes flickered. Not surprise. Not fear. Just calculation. "You've been busy," he said. "You have no idea," I replied. Nathan stood up, sensing something wrong. "What's going on?" I pulled up the file on my holo device and dropped it on the table. The digital display flared to life. Lines of exposed code, audit logs, terminal maps, the edit, the credentials, the truth. Nathan stared, then read, then froze. My father didn't move. "I submitted it under Protocol Aether," I said. "No pulling it back, no cleaning it up. Burke's finished, and your name's next on the review docket." He took a slow breath, exhaled through his nose. "This helps no one," he said. "All you've done is destroy what little honor this family had left." "No," I said. "You did that the day you signed that report. I just dug up the body you buried." For a second, no one spoke. Then Nathan, quietly, said, "Is it true?" He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at him. My father stared at his son like he was trying to remember if this version could still be controlled, but he didn't answer. And that told Nathan everything he needed to know. I walked away without another word. The fallout wouldn't be instant. It never was. But the wheels were turning. Fast. Burke would be stripped. My father's influence would be put under investigation. Strathmore would face a reckoning. Maybe small, maybe massive. That wasn't my call anymore. All I did was tear off the mask. What happened next? That was on them. The review board convened within 48 hours. Not a courtroom. Not a hearing in the public sense. Just a sealed room inside a reinforced facility beneath the Capitol grid. No press. No observers. Just 5 adjudicators, 2 data analysts, a high-level ethics officer, and me. I didn't wear a suit. Didn't wear my Department 9 access lanyard either. Just a black shirt, boots, and the file that carried the weight of my erased life. No decorations, no uniform. Just facts. I sat alone at a table in the center of the room. The walls were gray, sterile, humming with the quiet pressure of high-grade soundproofing. Surveillance drones hovered like silent witnesses, recording every breath, every twitch. They called him in 15 minutes later. My father, Brigadier Alan Cross. He walked in with the confidence of a man who'd stared down generals and budget cuts and international policy shifts without flinching, even now surrounded by undeniable proof of the lie he helped bury. He didn't waver. He took the seat across from me and nodded politely to the board. Then they began. The lead analyst read through the technicals first, calm, detached, clinical. She listed every audit log, every anomalous signature, every rerouted metadata trail, and every forged terminal access. Then she displayed the fragment, the edit inserted into my incident report at Strathmore. 3 lines that rewrote a career. 3 sentences that turned a life-saving decision into insubordination and mental instability. And then came the proof. The file's access history. The terminal used, XERXES-119. The login, Brigadier Alan Cross. Time-stamped, unmistakable. One of the panelists asked the question, flat and clear. "Did you authorize the edit, sir?" There was no pause. "Yes," my father said. Just like that. No hesitation. No attempt at denial or misdirection. "I made a judgment call," he added. The incident risked undermining Burke's authority at a critical juncture. The Academy was under media review. The optics mattered. He didn't even say it like a confession. He said it like an executive decision, like protocol. I said nothing for a long time. Just let the silence swell. Then I spoke. Once. "You didn't protect the command structure," I said quietly. "You buried the truth to protect yourself." His jaw tensed, not out of shame, out of frustration, as if I didn't understand the bigger picture, as if I had betrayed him by not playing the game. "You were young," he said. "Unpredictable. And Strathmore couldn't afford chaos." "I wasn't chaos," I said. "I was right." His lips tightened. He didn't argue that, because he knew. He always knew. The board recessed for deliberation. My father stood slowly, smoothed his jacket, and looked down at me like he wanted to say something that resembled fatherhood. But nothing came. So he walked out, the same way he'd walked away from me the day I signed the resignation papers 7 years earlier. Only this time, there were eyes watching. When the verdict was issued, it came with no theatrics. Burke's rank was revoked. His pension was frozen pending fraud review. All training modules based on his doctrine were suspended indefinitely. As for my father, officially reprimanded, stripped of command consultation privileges, blacklisted from future advisory roles, his legacy tarnished, but not erased, because men like him don't get erased. They fade, quietly, silently. No one offered me an apology. There was no press release, no parade, no "sorry we destroyed your life." But something strange happened on my way out of the building. An officer I didn't recognize, low-ranking, maybe early 30s, stood by the exit. As I passed, she nodded once. "I read the file," she said. "You did the right thing. Back then and now." I just looked at her, unsure what to say. But then she added, "We need more people like you." It hit harder than anything the board could have offered. Not because it erased the past, but because it meant the truth mattered to someone. Later that night, I sat alone in my quarters, watching the encrypted audit files cycle down to black. Aether had done its job. Justice wasn't always loud. Sometimes it came in silence, in the cold click of authorization keys, in the absence of denial, in the space where a lie used to live. I didn't feel victorious, but I did feel something else. Free. Not just from my father's shadow or Burke's ghost, or the Academy's polished myths. Free from the weight of pretending it didn't matter. And that was enough to keep going. Because this wasn't the end. It was just the part where I stopped running from the truth and started making sure no one else had to. The panel moved fast. For once, bureaucracy didn't stall behind protocol or ego. Maybe because the evidence was airtight. Maybe because too many eyes were now watching. Or maybe they finally realized what we'd buried for years was starting to rot through the floor. Colonel Alan Cross, my father, was retired by the end of the week, not with honors, not with ceremony, just a signature and a sealed file. No recommendation, no eulogy in the Defense Review Bulletin. His name would live on in records, but not in halls or lectures. No more speaking engagements. No more advisory roles. Just silence. And that silence was loud. Major Silas Burke, for his part, didn't go quietly. He threatened lawsuits, claimed Dr. Data said the audit was politically motivated. But Department 9 doesn't move without receipts, and we had them all. His access logs, his edits. The backroom memo trail he thought no one would ever find. He was flagged for formal investigation, removed from training operations, frozen in limbo. The kind of limbo that doesn't end with redemption, just quiet irrelevance. That was enough for me. Almost. The board reinstated my record in full. Every stripe, every commendation I'd earned at Strathmore. Backdated, digitally signed. But that wasn't what caught me off guard. It was the commendation added to my file. A short, unembellished note tucked inside the reinstatement packet, recognized for sound judgment under crisis and adherence to principles of command ethics. I read it twice. It didn't shout. It didn't bend over backward. But it told the truth. And for the first time in years, the system, my system, chose to do that. Department 9 received clearance to release our findings to the Military Integrity Archive. That meant the story wouldn't just live inside our walls. It would become part of the official record, permanent, undeniable. Burke's rise, my fall, the redaction, the cover-up, all of it etched into the bedrock of military history, not as a scandal, but as a lesson. They say truth doesn't need armor, but sometimes it needs someone willing to drag it into the light, bleeding and raw. Nathan didn't say anything the day the ruling came down. Didn't call, didn't write. I didn't expect him to. We were still two halves of a broken legacy, each trying to figure out what to do with the pieces. But 3 weeks later, an envelope arrived in my mail. No return address, no message, just a small padded sleeve. Inside, my original cadet insignia from Strathmore, polished, restored, gleaming like it had never been worn. On the back, engraved in clean, deliberate type, earned. That word landed harder than any speech, because it didn't ask for forgiveness. It didn't try to explain away the years of silence. It just acknowledged the thing we never had the courage to say aloud, that I never needed to be rebuilt, only recognized. There was no parade, no official letter of apology, no feature story in the Defense Journal. But that was fine by me. Some wins don't come with music or headlines. Some victories land like a whisper, quiet, sharp, undeniable. I didn't want applause. I just wanted the lie undone. And it was. Now, when I walk through Department 9's archive corridor, past the sealed vaults and cold servers humming with memory, I carry something lighter than before. Not pride, not revenge, just clarity. The truth stood. And this time, it stood with me. That's more than I ever thought I'd get. And it's more than enough to keep going. I didn't seek revenge. I wasn't looking to ruin anyone or burn the system to the ground. I sought clarity. I wanted the record to show what really happened. Not for applause, not for vindication, but because truth matters. Especially when it's inconvenient. Especially when it's buried by the people who claim to protect it. Some victories don't get salutes. There's no ceremony for surviving betrayal. No speech for standing your ground in silence. Some truths don't roar. They land like dust, slow and quiet, settling over the lies we were told to believe. And when the dust clears, What's left behind isn't glory. It's weight. The weight of knowing you were right. The weight of knowing they knew it too. I didn't want to be seen anymore. Not in the way I was before. I didn't need the spotlight or the press release. I didn't need my name stitched back into a system that once erased me. That wasn't the goal. I wanted to be undeniable, so that the next time someone like me is pushed out for doing the right thing, there's a record that says, this happened before. And the one they tried to silence? They didn't disappear. They stood their ground, and the ground held. That's the kind of victory no one can take, not even in silence, not ever again. Not